again. Thank you very much for being in touch. We've got some fantastic views coming in. Very interesting. The young man on OnlyFans. Now, this is somebody we've been talking about that is going to be on the programme a bit later. He was working in the National Health Service, and as you were saying, he was doing dementia care, wasn't he? He's now put himself on this website, which I hadn't heard of until yesterday, where you can... I don't know, you interact with other people who are also on the website.
As it were.
They ask you to do stuff and will pay you to do it. Anyway, so
like
Graham says, no, actually.
Can we keep our clothes on?
Yeah, Graham says, dear, good morning, good GB News, sorry. The young man on OnlyFans, the success span on OnlyFans is extremely short. It only acts as a gateway into prostitution. Excuse the pun, however, the material he produces now will only come back to bite him in the bum later in life.
Right, good morning team, says Philip in Staffordshire. The young chap you're going to give airtime to promote his new venture obviously had no passion or vocation for his role in the NHS and is better off out of it. That's from Phil in Staffordshire.
Yeah.
Not impressed.
No, absolutely. And then on the subject of calling those terrorists the Beatles, which we've made the point that it was actually what the hostages themselves called them, because they were 4 young men and they all had British accents. And as we've heard, one has now been sentenced to 8 life sentences. He was brought up in London, for heaven's sake. But a lot of people are, like me, have always been really worried about the fact that the media continue to call them the Beatles, even though we do point out that that's what they were known as. Lindsay in Derbyshire says the same. Thank you so much for pointing out the ridiculous naming of terrorists as our best-loved music group. I was about to write in myself about this. I grimace every time I see them called as such. It's the newspaper's fault for printing it. It is actually a fact that that's what they were called.
And Sean, absolutely, Anne, the media must stop using that nickname for brutal killers, especially when our lovely Liverpool lads were all about
love and peace.
Love and peace.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
They were.
Yeah. It would be interesting to listen to Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney get their view on that, because clearly it goes again, and there's the irony, I suppose. Maybe those hostages were thinking, no, these guys aren't about love and peace in any way whatsoever. So
we were also talking a bit earlier about the fact that the 2 candidates who are up for the Prime Ministership are previous cabinet colleagues. Although they clearly didn't get on that well. And maybe it would have been nice to see some fresh young blood. Hi, GB News team, says Helen in Ledbury. I'm sorry, Anne, if you've inexperienced people going into the Prime Minister's job, the civil servants and advisors would eat them alive. The Prime Minister does need to have some cabinet experience so that they can effectively and strongly navigate the crocodile-infested swamp that is Whitehall. Great show, she says, best regards.
And Kenneth adds to that. Good morning. The 2 final candidates for PM were chosen by Parliament, not by the electorate members of the party. Good point, it was the MPs. This is why there is anger. It should be our choice of candidates, not MPs. They seem to forget they are there to serve us. Kenneth, I suspect a member of the Conservative Party, writing in with that point.
Shall we take a look at what the newspapers are saying today? Quick whiz through the front pages. The Times reports on how the former Cabinet Minister Michael Gove has backed ex-Chancellor Rishi Sunak to be the next Conservative leader. He also adds that he plans to step away from frontline politics.
On to The Guardian, it goes with a line on the Tory leadership frontrunner Liz Truss, who personally supported the NHS cuts back in a 2009 article, arguing that the health service could not be put on a pedestal.
And it's a cost of living crisis on the front page of The Independent, as 1 in 7 small firms fear they're going to have to downsize or shut down.
Telegraph goes with the NHS launching a campaign urging the public to avoid A&E as the winter crisis bites, yes, in August.
Yes, well, let's go through what's inside the papers as well right now with our wonderful newspaper reviewers Claire Muldoon and James Woodhouse. Now, who's first? I don't know, I've lost my thing.
It's Claire with a mirror. Oh, this is what we didn't have time for this last time. It's a hard sell.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Hard sell as opposed to a soft sell, and I'm not talking about the pop group. I'm talking about Wilmot Dixon, the construction company, who have built hotel custody in the form of a new ITV 3-parter which goes behind this new custody unit called Birchen Way Custody Facility in Grimsby. Now, what this services is built on brownfield, and it serves a lot of, well, for want of a better word,
old lags, young lags?
Well, every kind of detainee you could possibly think of that's been picked up and arrested. But when they go into this new custody suite, there's buzzes for everything. There's buzzes for what time is it? There's buzzes for I'm hungry. There's buzzes for where can I go? Buzzes for when am I getting out? Now the whole ethos behind the change in moving away from a prison cell, moving away from the very punitive way that we all think that prisons perhaps ought to be run, to teach people a lesson because people are there because they've done ill in the world, they've harmed people, they've harmed themselves, or they've harmed the economy in some ways.
Are they really being called, as it says here, customers?
Yes.
Seriously?
So even the terminology, the word, the emotive language that is being used here would denote something
But
very...
they're not customers, are they? They're detainees.
Well, and yes, this is the thing, but then if we look back to countries in Europe, and Monaco in particular, and you look at their system of punity and prisons, they serve their prisoners 5-star meals, Michelin-starred meals, because they think, they're from the understanding and the view that if you treat people well, i.e. you don't degrade them, you don't make them feel as bad as they possibly could, even though they have done some heinous crimes in places, you actually still should treat them with respect, and one of these ways of treating with respect is to, to serve them, basically. Serve them well and, let them use the facility, but that the ethos and the view of that is in the hope that a lot of people will not re-offend. They've smacked themselves in the foot. They're saying here that even the Sergeant Ian jokes, what would you rate us on TripAdvisor? I mean, this language isn't very useful, I don't think. Going behind the scenes at the police facility, a 3-part ITV documentary follows the staff as they carry out their tough jobs with humour and grit. I mean, it's appalling, absolutely appalling. Sue says if you show empathy and are actually listening to them other than the customers, you settle them down. But then they think, we don't want people to re-offend, and they've already known and identified several people, predominantly women, who have come back re-offending every time.
That's the key
They've got
question,
Gangster Granny. They've even nicknamed her. So I don't think the language is being helpful. Calling them customers, and I'll tell you something else. I don't think that allowing our prison system to fall into private hands will do anyone or any society any favours, and I think it has to be stopped.
Nobody's arguing that they shouldn't be treated with respect.
No, because everyone's a human being.
All human beings should.
Absolutely are.
And of course there is a notion, which a lot of people would support, that the better you treat somebody, the more likely they are to actually mend their ways. But not... this is turning the tables upside down.
I mean, what amuses me is that, American prisons are notorious for their severity, but all this stuff about customers and even respect, Anne, right? I don't respect a prisoner. I may treat them with courtesy, but I don't respect them if they're a definite offender.
You respect them as a human being, yes.
Well, yeah, but
treat them as though they
all we hear about is respect, customers, stakeholders. I'm surprised they're not called stakeholders. All of this comes from America, and it's never thought about here, because when Tony Blair read the Harvard Business Review back in the 90s, it was Pauline conversion, and ever since...
Have a nice day.
Yeah, have a nice day. Not just that, but it's all from American management theory, and it's all rubbish. So, it doesn't sound very grim in Grimsby, I must say.
Just a final point, if you do tune in, a 61-year-old gangster granny checks in after stealing a fountain pump from a garden centre. She's a prolific offender, having recently served jail time, but she enjoys her hot cuppa and a chat before heading off to her cell for her beauty sleep.
Well, you see, I can imagine that, actually, too. I mean, for many people, that might be absolutely favourable to living in the real outside world.
Yep.
Talking of modern management, you picked up the Daily Star, James. Politicians attempt relatability, whatever that is, but fail miserably, close quotes.
Well, it's a hilarious story from the Star, with which I confess I'm not entirely familiar, but they've got all of these typical, I suppose, jokes like unbelievable, and what it's all about is politicians tucking into hamburgers, butties, Bananas most famously with David Miliband, and they always get it wrong.
And the bacon sandwich with Ed Miliband.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're trying to come over as man or woman of the
Yeah,
people.
you know, but this isn't politics, right? I mean, I don't go to McDonald's. Is that a criminal offence?
Exactly.
I am prepared to talk politics. And so it does reflect how they themselves feel out of touch, and therefore they affect a plebeian, you know, eating habit, and then they come a cropper. You've got to laugh because they really are out of touch.
And again, American? Is this from the American political
I don't think
handbook?
it is.
Man of the people?
No, in America, you'd probably say, no, I eat a 87-pound steak from Tom Whipple or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
But
uncooked red meat.
that's right. They would show off. Whereas here, we're all concerned to, you know, and the Tories as well, to be plebeian. Nobody buys it. They all look very stupid. I don't know whether the TV, your cameras can pick
If
that
you hold
up.
it very still. Yeah, we're reminded there of David Miliband with his banana. That's
Ed Miliband, yes.
Ed Miliband with
bacon
his
corn.
sloppy
With
bacon sandwich.
a giant gourd of some sort.
Yeah, and John Gummer, of course, who ate a hamburger when he was trying to prove
And that was before
British
the
beef
mad
is
cow
safe.
disease.
Well, it was during.
During,
It was
that's
during
right.
mad
Yeah,
cow. He was trying to say British beef is safe. I would even feed it to my daughter there, and it massively backfired on him because it just looked terrible.
Well, he's the man in charge of the Climate Change Commission, let's not forget. You know, dictating that we all buy heat pumps. And good luck with that, Lord Deben, as he's known.
Is that what he is now?
Yeah.
Okay, The Guardian, Claire. Islanders themselves do not believe the proposal would tackle depopulation. That's 50,000 quid to move to the Scottish Islands.
I'm really surprised this is only a brief footnote, actually, almost as a footnote in The Guardian. The Scottish Government came up with this harebrained scheme to offer £50,000 to people, families, to move to Orkney predominantly. There's 100, almost, 90 inhabited islands where communities face challenges of population and housing pressures. But they scrapped it. Do you know why they scrapped it? Because they received feedback that it's not going to work. Why didn't they do the feedback before
First.
Mill launched it? Again, another SNP catastrophe.
Why
the
wouldn't it
Islanders,
work?
because the Islanders have said that it should be scrapped after consultation found that the Islanders themselves did not believe the scheme was the right way to tackle depopulation. They're finding that they've got more retirees and second homeowners wanting
Rather than young families
rather
going
than,
and starting
yes,
off.
exactly,
Right.
that have an attainment or have a connection with the island. And one of the Liberal Democrats up there said there'd be better use of the money for infrastructure. Why don't we open up? There's only one airport serving there, and that's Inverness. The Caledonian ferry fiasco that the SNP clearly can't get its head around because it's mucked up. They can't even build bridges. You know, this is again a developed country. We all should be working towards something better than this.
I was in the Orkneys about 8 days ago.
Oh, lovely, Anne.
Fabulous place. But here am I as an older person thinking, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to live there, to do painting, and I don't know, it's just the most fabulous place.
But how easy was it to get to?
Well, I was on a cruise ship, so it was very easy.
Well, okay, so
Just called in.
The ferries.
Well, that's one ex. But my niece, actually, my goddaughter's up there filming the new Saoirse Ronan film at the moment. So they're using a lot of islands for film sets. But it's incredibly difficult to get to.
And the
You cannot
ferries
pass
are all getting very ancient now, aren't they?
Oh, they're
The new ones
supposed to
are
have been
all-
rebuilt,
Yeah,
Mark. They're supposed to have been built by now, but the money's
So
gone.
if you're going to attract younger people who would actually add to the workforce,
the vibrancy of the
you've got
islands.
you've got to make it more accessible.
Yes,
Well,
and you've got to have the drain.
It's refreshing to hear a critique of the SNP with you, Claire, but I must say that if you look at your report on Felixstowe earlier, you look at the ferries in Scotland, and you look at, I hope we'll get time to do at the RMT, there's no doubt that transport is a major area for struggle, for dissent, and it has a very powerful impact on the economy.
Absolutely.
And that's true of Canadian truckers, our own port workers, rail workers, and so on.
We never seem to get to grips with it, do we?
No, well,
I mean, I remember John Prescott.
in
Do you remember
charge.
John Prescott was made transport minister or something way back in New Labour days? And he said, I'm going to get to grips with it. We'll move more freight on the rail. We'll take it off the roads, etc., etc. It sounded such a brilliant plan, but it never happened.
Yeah. And on that point, James, you picked up in the Sun, as we've got another national rail strike today, the strikes may come to a close imminently if Grant Shapps has his way, I suspect that we may see a few more days of industrial action before then.
Well, yes, I think, Shapps is, hapless Shapps, as I like to call him. And here it is in the Sun, page 2. It's the end of the line, Mick. And, since I profess in innovation, I'm always struck by Shapps coming out with these really new ideas, like holding the country to ransom, creating misery, holding us hostage. It's the end of the line. It doesn't really speak a lot for his intellectual powers that he can't muster a proper argument. And I don't believe he can, because their offensive the government is doing is quite brilliant by standing back from it all. I don't know that the RMT is going to be...
What, in terms of the unions being demonised by the travelling public, or...?
No, but demonised by the government. I think the travelling public is irritated but broadly supportive, actually.
Yes,
There's all the people working from home who are quite supportive as well. I think
I enjoy working from home.
Well, even a 2 or 3 bus journey home from at the office last night, I'm still supporting.
Yes, yes. I think things
Even
have
in this
changed.
weather.
See, this is what the Tories don't understand, that, when you've got large profits being announced by large companies...
As we heard of Felix.
Yeah,
Yes.
and you've got Boris Johnson and all the residue of that. When the Tories come in with this sort of warmed-up 80s Thatcherite rhetoric, it just doesn't play, because people know that they are not legitimate, that they have made a disaster, that they've been in charge
They've been in
12
charge for
years.
10 years.
So it's different
Okay.
from the 70s.
Well, actually, yeah. And as we were reporting earlier, Labour's lead has gone up to 43% in an overnight poll.
Yeah.
43%.
To Conservative...
And they say that Keir
28.
Starmer is beginning to talk the language of somebody who expects to be in power.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to hear Keir Starmer speak, because
Well,
so far he's
Let's-
got
Where's he
absolutely
been?
nothing to say.
Thank you for joining us.